We live in interesting times.
For the headlines.
A fierce blaze caused by a suspected arson attack rips through an animation company building in Japan, killing at least 26 people and injuring dozens more.
Despite concerns aired by some quarters about the government's crackdown on narcotics, a human rights official said that the initiative's acceptance among Filipinos is reflected by the high approval rating of President Rodrigo Duterte.
Fired up, Donald Trump takes aim once more at Democratic lawmakers who hate America hours after an opposition bid to impeach the U.S. president over racist attacks is shut down in Congress.
The World Health Organization declares the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo a public health emergency of international concern, a rare designation only used for the gravest epidemics.
I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. A suspected arson attack on an animation production company in Japan killed 26 people and injured dozens more on Thursday, with flames gutting the building in the city of Kyoto. Police said the fierce blaze appeared to have been started deliberately, but there was no immediate information on a possible motive. The toll continued to climb hours after the fire began, with fire department officials saying bodies were being discovered as they searched the ravaged building. A fire department official said that at least 11 more people had been found in cardiorespiratory arrest, a term used in Japan to signify a victim's death before it is officially certified. The discoveries on the building's second floor and a stairwell leading to the roof raised the toll to at least 26 now. Officials said 35 people had also been injured in the fire, 10 of whom were in serious condition, and local media said around 70 people were believed to have been in the building when the fire started. The fire department said it began receiving calls around 10:35 a.m. local time about the fire at the studio belonging to Kyoto Animation. Callers reported having heard a loud explosion from the first floor and Kyoto Animation and seeing smoke, according to a fire department spokesman. Police said they were still investigating the cause of the fire, but it was a suspected arson attack. Police also say they believe the suspect is a 41-year-old man based on a driving license he was carrying. He was detained and is being treated for his injuries at a hospital. The man reportedly admitted as he was being taken to hospital that he spread the liquid around before setting it on fire. Investigative sources cite witnesses who say the man was telling people to die as he started the blaze. Japan has a famously low crime rate, with violent crime very rare. Arson is considered a serious crime, and people convicted of deliberately setting fires in a country where many people still live in wooden houses can face the death penalty. A man convicted of setting a fire that killed 16 people in Osaka back in 2008 is currently on death row.
Despite concerns aired by some quarters about the government's crackdown on narcotics, a ranking official said on Thursday that the initiative's acceptance among Filipinos is reflected by the high approval rating of President Rodrigo Duterte. A recent Pulse Asia survey showed that 85% of Filipinos have expressed approval of President, 11% were undecided, and only 4% have expressed disapproval. With regard to human rights concern in the country, Katuran noted that the Philippines undergoes the Universal Periodic Review conducted by no less than the UN Human Rights Council. Citing this, He reiterated that Manila rejects the Iceland-initiated resolution adopted by the rights body, which seeks a comprehensive written report on the human rights situation of the Philippines.
We had to address an issue with regards to the possible, and which was actually which happened, the tabling of a resolution coming from Iceland. The Philippines went over to participated actively during the last session because we wanted to strengthen the UN as a mechanism. We wanted to strengthen the UN Human Rights Council as a mechanism for review, for assessment, for monitoring. But if it is going to be used by certain interest groups, it would not really effectively strengthen the said mechanism, and that was our aim.
Yusek Atura said, if Manila agrees to the arrangement suggested in the text, in the UN text, given the very political environment in the Philippines, everything will simply be politicized.
The second worst Ebola outbreak of all time in the Democratic Republic of the Congo was officially declared a public health emergency of international concern, with the head of the World Health Organization calling for countries to take notice and redouble efforts.
The Ebola emergency meeting has today advised the Director General to declare a public health emergency of international concern, a FIC. What does that mean? This is still a regional emergency and by no way a global threat. First, there is concern about spread of Ebola from Goma, a getaway, even though so far no cases were newly infected in this city. Two, there is disappointment that there has been a recurrence of intense transmission in Beni, so that the geographical expansion is now some 500 kilometers. 4, the fight is ongoing for a full year now. And lastly, the assassination of 2 Ebola workers demonstrates the continued risk to responders due to security situation.
As a result of this concern for potential further spread, the committee recommended that I declare the outbreak a public health emergency of international concern, FIC, and I have accepted that advice. Our risk assessment remains that the risk of spread in DRC and the region remains very high, and the risk of spread outside the region remains low.
The committee expressed disappointment about delays in funding which have constrained the response. They also reinforced the need to protect livelihoods of the people most affected by the outbreak by keeping transport routes and borders open. It is essential to avoid the punitive economic consequences of travel and trade restrictions on affected communities. Since it was declared almost a year ago, the outbreak has been classified as a level 3 emergency, the most serious by WHO, triggering the highest level of mobilization from WHO. The UN has also recognized the seriousness of the emergency by activating the humanitarian system wide scale up to support the Ebola response.
I emphasize that WHO does not recommend any restrictions on travel or trade, which rather than stopping Ebola can actually hamper the fight. Closing borders could have disastrous consequences for the lives and livelihoods of the people who cross the border every day for trade, education, or to visit relatives. Now is the time for the international community to stand in solidarity with the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo, not to impose punitive and counterproductive restrictions that will only serve to isolate them.
The U.S. House of Representatives on Wednesday rejected the congressman's bid to launch impeachment proceedings against Donald Trump, tamping down a groundswell of anger after the president made xenophobic comments about Democrats.
In this vote, the yeas are 332 and the nays are 95, with one answering present. The motion is adopted.
The president responded on Twitter Wednesday evening and said, "The United States House of Representatives has just overwhelmingly voted to kill the resolution on impeachment 332 to 95 and 1. This is perhaps the most ridiculous and time-consuming project I have ever had to work on. Impeachment of your president, who has led the greatest economic boom in the history of our country, the best job numbers, biggest tax reduction, rebuilt military, and much more, is now over. This should never be allowed to happen to another president of the United States again." For the third time since President Donald Trump took office, Democratic Congressman Al Green of Houston pressed the U.S. House of Representatives to impeach the president Wednesday. And for the third time, Green failed.
Impeaching Donald John Trump, President of the United States, of high misdemeanors. Resolved that Donald John Trump, President of the United States, is unfit to be president, unfit to represent the American values of decency and morality.
In the meantime, impeachment is likely to remain a near insurmountable goal for its champions as long as House Speaker Pelosi opposes it. Pelosi has always argued that such a tactic is not strategically prudent when Republicans have control of the Senate.
That is the serious path that we are on. We have 6 committees that are working on following the facts in terms of any abuse of power, obstruction of justice, and the rest that the president may have engaged in. That is the serious path that we are on. Not that Mr. Green is not serious, but we'll deal with that on the floor.
Will you vote to table it? Will you vote to table it?
I don't know what we will do, but we will deal with it on the floor.
A fired-up President Donald Trump took aim once more at Democratic lawmakers who hate America as he hit the campaign trail Wednesday, hours after an opposition bid to impeach the U.S. president over racist attacks was shut down in Congress. Egging on a sea of supporters in Greenville, North Carolina, President Trump reeled off the names of the ethnic minority congresswomen whom he has urged to go back to their countries of origin in a series of incendiary tweets. Take a listen.
I just heard that the United States House of Representatives has overwhelmingly voted to kill the most ridiculous project I've ever been involved in, the resolution, how stupid is that, on impeachment. Question. Omar blamed the United States for the crisis in Venezuela. I mean, think of that one. And she looks down with contempt on the hard-working Americans, saying that ignorance is pervasive in many parts of this country. But Cortez, somebody said that's not her name. They said that's not her name, sir. I said, no. I don't have time to go with 3 different names. We'll call her Cortez. Too much time, takes too much time. These left-wing ideologues see our nation as a force of evil, the way they speak so badly of our country. They want to demolish our Constitution, weaken our military, eliminate the values that built this magnificent country.
The U.S. House voted Wednesday to block $8.1 billion in arms sales to Saudi Arabia and other allies a rebuke of Donald Trump that will likely lead to a veto by the president. Lawmakers, many of whom are outraged with the kingdoms over Riyadh's role in the murder of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi, last year approved 3 resolutions that would prevent the controversial sales that were announced under emergency measures earlier this year by President Trump. The resolutions blocking the sales have already cleared the U.S. Senate and now go to the White House, where Trump is expected to issue the 3rd veto of his presidency. While the House blocked the sales with a comfortable majority, it was about 50 votes shy of the 2/3 needed to override Trump's veto. Trump is seeking 22 separate sales of aircraft support maintenance, precision-guided munitions, and other weapons and equipment to Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Jordan at a moment of heightened tensions in the Middle East. Critics say the arms sales would aggravate the devastating war in Yemen, where Saudi Arabia is leading a U.S.-backed coalition in a battle against the Iranian supported Houthi rebels, and which the UN said has triggered the world's worst humanitarian crisis.
Meanwhile, President Trump hosted dozens of victims of religious persecution at the White House as part of an ongoing effort by the administration to push for religious freedom abroad. Let's listen in.
In America, we've always understood that our rights come from God, not from government. In our Bill of Rights, the first liberty is religious liberty. Each of us has the right to follow the dictates of our conscience and the demands of our religious conviction. We know that if people are not free to practice their faith, then all of the freedoms are at risk, and frankly, freedoms don't mean very much. That's why Americans will never tire in our effort to defend and promote religious freedom. I don't think any president has taken it as seriously as me. To me, it's very important. It's vital. It's really vital. And I just want to thank everybody very much for being with us today. You've been through a lot. And I think I can say it for everyone here. You've been through a lot, more than most people could ever endure. And I want to congratulate you, because that's what you need, is congratulations. It's really an honor to be with you, and I will stand side by side with you forever.
This is Nadia, is a Nobel Peace Prize winner.
I'm from Iraq, and I cannot say my family is there in the jail, because when ISIS attacked us, no one protected us. After 2003, we started to disappear from our area, from our homeland. When ISIS attacked us in 2014, they killed 6 of my brothers. They killed my mom. They took me to captivity with my 11 sister-in-law, with all my sisters and my nieces. Until today, we have 3,000 Yazidi women and children in captivity.
We're going to look into it very
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr.
And you had the Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
But
They gave it to you for what reason? You can explain.
for what reason? For that, after all this happened to me, I didn't give up. I make it clear to everyone that ISIS raped thousands of Yazidi women. This one was first time the woman from Iraq, she get out and spoke about what happened to her.
Oh, really? Is that right?
It's
That's the first time.
and it's.
So you escaped?
I escaped, but I don't have my freedom
I
yet,
understand.
because you didn't see any ISIS in court. ISIS are, we don't know if they killed everyone, if they are in jail, but we know we have 3,000 Yazidi women and children, including my niece, my nephew, my sister-in-law. 3 years ago, she called us. She said, I'm in Syria, and now we didn't know anything about it.
Let me look. We're going to look. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
U.S. Ambassador at Large.
U.S. Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, Sam Brownback, said additional measures to tackle persecution would be announced at the State Department meeting Thursday. The Trump administration frequently speaks of promoting religious freedom, a key issue for much of his evangelical base. Government ministers and representatives of persecuted groups are spending 3 days at the State Department for a meeting on religious freedom, which Vice President Mike Pence will address on Thursday, U.S. time. Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned.
Health is our most important asset, and it should always be a constant effort to seek ways to take care of it. That includes professional medical help from the best available. The Manila-Beijing Medical Associated Incorporated is known as one of the most specialized centers in medical.
Sa gitna ng dilim, ako ang mata sa sahing papawid. Ako ang dilat sa tuwing ang bayan ko ay tulog ng mahimbing. Ang aming buhay, handang ialay para sa bayan. Kayo'y handang maglingkuran.
Join us in celebrating the 72nd anniversary of the Philippine Air Force.
Mexican drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was sentenced to life in prison, plus a symbolic 30 years and ordered to pay back $12.6 billion of proceeds of his crimes, which span a quarter century.
It means that never again will Guzman pour poison over our borders, making billions while innocent lives are lost. We cannot undo the violence, misery, and devastation inflicted on countless individuals and communities by the drugs that Mr. Guzman and his organization inflicted on our country for more than 2 decades. But we can ensure that he spends every minute of every day of the rest of his life in a prison here in the United States.
This is the only sentence that can be given to somebody who has spent a lifetime poisoning the streets of our community.
This case was simply an inquisition. It was a show trial, and how it ended is exactly perfect for that description. And no matter what you think of Joaquin Guzman, he still deserves a fair trial.
In other news, prosecutors dropped sexual assault proceedings against Kevin Spacey after the case against the Hollywood star collapsed over his alleged victim's refusal to testify. William Little had accused the 59-year-old Oscar winner of groping him in a bar on the upscale resort island of Nantucket in July 2016. But Massachusetts prosecutors filed a formal notice of abandonment of an indecent assault and battery indictment due to, quote, the unavailability of the complaining witness. Little chose to plead the Fifth Amendment, which allows witnesses not to testify so as not to incriminate themselves, after it was revealed that his cell phone, a key piece of evidence, may have been compromised. Little has said he took a smartphone video of the incident, which he says took place when he was an 18-year-old busboy in the bar and restaurant. But the phone, which the defense wanted to examine, has disappeared, as confirmed by Little and his parents, who were also called on to testify. A police officer said he returned the phone after extracting all the information, but admitted he neglected to ask for a receipt upon its return. The family said they never received it. Little's mother, Heather Unruh, a television news anchor in the Boston area, admitted she had deleted some potentially embarrassing photos before handing the phone over, but said she had not erased anything related to the alleged assault. Spacey had insisted on his innocence of the charges, which would have carried a penalty of up to 5 years in prison. Little was working in Nantucket for the summer and had remained in the bar after his shift finished to see his hero. After meeting the actor and telling him he was 23 years old, the legal drinking age is 21 in Massachusetts, he said he started drinking first beer and then whiskey at Spacey's urging. The actor then allegedly invited him back to his place along with some other friends. The young man declined, suspecting the actor was trying to seduce him. But he stayed at the bar in the hopes of getting a picture with Spacey. It was then that the actor began sexually molesting the young man, according to court filings. It is the latest chapter in Hollywood's reckoning over sexual assault and harassment, which has already seen television icon Bill Cosby jailed, with movie mogul Harvey Weinstein's trial set to begin in September.
The White House confirmed Wednesday that Turkey would be excluded from the F-35 stealth fighter jet program after it purchased a Russian missile defense system in defiance of warnings from Western allies.
The U.S. and other F-35 partners are aligned in this decision to suspend Turkey from the program and initiate the process to formally remove Turkey from the program.
The U.S.-made F-35 Joint Strike Fighter cannot coexist with a Russian intelligence collection platform that will be used to learn about its advanced capabilities, she said. She said Washington had made multiple offers of its own Patriot missile defense system to Turkey, but Ankara went ahead and acquired the Russian system, running counter to a NATO pledge to avoid adopting Russian systems. Turkey's foreign ministry termed the move unfair, saying in a statement that this one-sided step neither complies with the spirit of alliance nor it is based on legitimate reasons.
Turkey will certainly and regrettably lose jobs and future economic opportunities from this decision. It will no longer receive more than $9 billion in projected work share related to the F-35 over the life of the program.
This is a rather unfortunate development, and one the U.S. government has worked tirelessly to avoid. We have been clear and consistent that Turkey can choose to acquire the S-400 or the F-35. It cannot have both. Our decision to unwind Turkey's participation in the F-35 program is no surprise, as our concerns have repeatedly been communicated to the Turkish government.
The announcement came 5 days after Turkey began taking delivery of the Russian missile system, shrugging off 2 years of warnings from the United States and other NATO allies that it could imperil their relationship. The U.S. action will lock out a number of Turkish manufacturers that were producing parts and components for the F-35 and block Turkey's plans to purchase about 100 of the advanced fighters. On Tuesday, President Donald Trump declined to criticize Turkey for the S-400 purchase, falsely charging that the President Recep Tayyip Erdogan was unfairly forced into the move by his White House predecessor, Barack Obama.
They wanted to buy. I don't stick up for countries. I don't stick up for Turkey. I don't stick up other than I've had a good relationship with President Erdogan. He wanted to buy our Patriot missile. We wouldn't sell it. And then when he made a deal, and he really wanted to buy it, and then when he made a deal with another country, Russia, to buy their system that he didn't even want, then all of a sudden we say, oh, okay, we'll now sell you the Patriot. And because of the fact he bought a Russian missile, we're not allowed to sell him billions of dollars worth of aircraft. It's not a fair situation.
Meanwhile, President Donald Trump's administration is diverting nearly $42 million in development aid from Guatemala and Honduras to promote Venezuela's opposition chief Juan Guaido, including paying staff salaries, and internal documents showed. In a memo obtained by AFP, the U.S. Agency for International Development called Venezuela's political crisis a significant exigent event in the U.S. national interest that required a switch in $41.9 million in funds. The U.S. and more than 50 other countries recognized Guaido as president of Venezuela. But leftist leader Nicolas Maduro remains in power despite nearly half a year of international efforts. Among other uses, that portion will go to interim government staff salaries or stipends, work-related travel, and other costs necessary to ensure full deployment of a transparent financial management system and other activities necessary for a democratic transition. It will also be directed to non-government organizations to create media content and airtime to provide greater reach to Venezuelan citizens, according to the memo. Another $2 million will go to support diplomatic efforts by Guaido's supporters as they negotiate with Maduro. The two sides have been meeting in Barbados in talks mediated by Norway, although limited progress has been seen.
Thousands marched in Puerto Rico for a fifth day on Wednesday, demanding the resignation of Governor Ricardo Rosello following corruption accusations and the leak of text chats in which he made sexist and homophobic remarks. To the chant of Ricky Renuncia or Ricky Resign, large crowds gathered in the capital San Juan, clamoring for Rosello to leave office, which he is refusing to do. Rosello is under pressure after U.S. federal agents arrested contractors and government officials, including former Education Secretary Julia Kelleher, on corruption charges. The protests erupted after the Center for Investigative Journalism on Saturday released 889 pages of text chats on the encrypted messaging app Telegram, in which Rosello and 12 other male administration members criticized officials, politicians, and journalists. They shared memes, jokes, and crude sexual insults, according to the Center and an excerpt published by local daily El Nuevo Dia. In one exchange, Chief Financial Officer Cristiano Rosobrino makes homophobic references to Latin superstar Martin. Demonstrators are also angry over Rosello's handling of the Hurricane Maria emergency in 2017, which left nearly 3,000 dead and the island in financial crisis. The Caribbean island of Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory and residents are American citizens, but it does not have the same congressional representation according to states.
In other news, Cambodia will send back 1,600 tons of plastic waste found in shipping containers to the U.S. and Canada, according to an official on Wednesday, as Southeast Asian countries revolt against an onslaught of rubbish shipments. Environment Ministry spokesman Net Tiaktra said the rubbish was found on Tuesday in scores of shipping containers at the port town of Sihanoukville and will be sent back to its origin. He said Cambodia is not a bin for out-of-date technology to be dumped in. He said 70 containers full of plastic waste were shipped from the United States, while another 13 were sent from Canada. Images of officials inspecting the containers stuffed with bundled plastic riled up Cambodian social media users. The trash delivery was a serious insult, Transparency International Cambodia Executive Director Preep Kaul said in a Facebook post. Huge quantities of rubbish have wound up on Southeast Asian shores as opposition to handling exported trash is growing in the region. Malaysia sent 450 tons of imported waste back to Western countries in May, while Philippine leader President Rodrigo Duterte threatened the same month to personally sail with 69 containers worth of Canadian waste and dump it in Canadian waters.
The suspense had been building for 24 hours. Would Buzz Aldrin, the second man to walk on the moon, show up Wednesday night in Huntsville, Alabama, nicknamed Rocket City, for the nearby NASA Space Flight Center? Public appearances by the former astronaut, now 89, are rare. On Tuesday, he left his former Apollo 11 crewmate Michael Collins in the lurk. Aldrin declined to join him at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, where the two were supposed to appear together on NASA TV to mark the 50th anniversary of their mission. Neil Armstrong died in 2012, but at 6:45 p.m., Colonel Aldrin appeared in Huntsville's Majestic Space Rocket Center, dressed in a blue window pane checked suit, an American flag tie, and star-spangled socks.
But I think what is needed now for our country is the next step, space alliance. That's the gathering together of the capable entities, space agencies, and other contributors. When I say an alliance, what I really mean is we can't pay for all of it. We have to learn at the moon by bringing in the other nations that want to really go there for the first time.
And as the second human ever to step on the moon, Neil Armstrong was first down the ladder. Aldrin recounts feeling sure-footed in the 1/6 gravity of the lunar surface while gazing at the magnificent desolation around him. Aldrin says he and his crewmates were so absorbed in doing their jobs that they were oddly disconnected from how momentous the occasion was as it unfolded for hundreds of millions of people on Earth, watching it all on live television. It was 50 years ago to the day on Tuesday that Aldrin, Armstrong, and Collins were launched into space atop a Saturn V rocket from Florida's Kennedy Space Center.
I guess you're about the only person around that doesn't have TV coverage of the scene.
Eagle News International will be right back.
The Cine Bata Video Festival is calling for submission of entries, with this year's theme, United in Love. If you are a Filipino video content creator, show us your best work for a chance to represent the Philippines. Deadline of submission is on August 30, 2019. For inquiries, visit or contact the following.
Hi everyone, I'm Maria Marikio.
Today I'm here at Haystack Rock in Oregon. So this famous rock formation is a great place to witness sunrise and sunsets. You can set up a picnic blanket and hang out with your friends or family here at the beach. For more stuff like this, tune in to ABC Digital Nest. I'm Rio, and I'm 1 with 25.
Welcome back. President Duterte has signed into law an act meant to provide benefits and programs to further develop startups and startup enablers in the Philippines. President Duterte signed the Innovative Startup Act, RA 11337, on April 26, but a copy of the document was released to reporters on Thursday, July 18. Under the law, President Duterte recognizes the importance of creating new jobs and opportunities, improve production and advance innovation and trade in the country through startups. A startup refers to any person or registered entity in the Philippines which aims to develop an innovative product, process, or business model. The law allows the creation of a Philippine Startup Development Program, which is meant to support the research and development of startups and startup enablers in the Philippines. The Department of Science and Technology, Department of Information and Communications Technology, the Department of Trade and Industry will be the lead agencies to assess, monitor, develop, and expand the program.
Global trade is slowing, and the IMF is urging countries to avoid further conflict, the fund's chief economist told reporters today in Washington, D.C. The IMF released the annual External Sector Report, which focuses on trade imbalances and their causes Wednesday. Here's Agita Gopinath, chief economist at the IMF.
The main short-term risks stem from an intensification of trade tensions or a disorderly Brexit, which can have negative implications for global demand and global risk appetite, which then in turn can affect economies that are highly dependent on foreign demand and on external finance.
The report found that overall current account surpluses and deficits reached 3% of world GDP in 2018, declining marginally, but still well below pre-global financial crisis levels of a decade ago. The ESR found that higher than war-rented balances persist in the euro area as a whole and in other advanced Asian economies, South Korea and Singapore. Lower than war-rented balances continue in the US and UK primarily. But with much attention paid to China, the fund found that a narrowing current account surplus has put it broadly in line with fundamentals.
A noteworthy development is the continued narrowing of China's current account surplus against a backdrop of greater exchange rate flexibility and real appreciation over the last decade. Its current account is now assessed to be in line with fundamentals, although achieving a lasting external rebalancing will require adopting further structural reforms, including to reduce subsidies to state-owned enterprises and reduce entry barriers in certain sectors, as current expansionary fiscal and credit policies are gradually withdrawn. It is imperative that all countries avoid policies that distort trade. Recent bilateral trade actions have had no discernible impact on the global imbalances, as external imbalances reflect macro policies that affect aggregate saving and investment. Instead, higher tariffs have been associated with increased prices for consumers and are weighing on global trade, investment, and growth. We are seeing global trade growth slow, which tells you that this is not just about shifting of trade to different parts of the world, but an actual overall reduction in trade. So this is having a fundamental impact on global trade.
The EU hit U.S. chip-making giant Qualcomm with an antitrust fine of 242 million euros. In another blow against a tech titan that is fighting global competition battles. The fine is the second mega penalty leveled against Qualcomm by Brussels, which already fined the chip maker 997 million euros back in January of 2018. Our investigation found that Qualcomm abused its market dominance between mid-2009 and mid-2011 by engaging in predatory pricing, an EU statement said. The Commission fined Qualcomm 997 million euros last year for paying iPhone maker Apple to use only its chips, a tactic aimed at thwarting rivals, including Intel.
South Korea's central bank on Thursday cut its key interest rate for the first time in 3 years as the economy struggles with sluggish global growth and with the country embroiled in a trade spat with Japan. The Bank of Korea, or BOK, lowered its key rate to 1.5% from 1.75%, citing slowing exports and increased volatility in domestic financial markets. It joins a growing number of central banks worldwide that reduced borrowing costs to shore up their economies in the face of a prolonged trade dispute between the U.S. and China. At the same time, long-standing tensions between South Korea and Japan over the use of forced labor during World War II have bubbled over into a trade row that experts warn could hammer the global tech market. Japan has restricted exports of 3 chemicals crucial to South Korea's tech sector and used by major firms including Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix in the manufacture of microchips and smartphones. South Korea and Japan are both U.S. allies, democracies and market economies faced with an overbearing China and nuclear-armed North Korea. But relations between the two remain heavily affected by Japan's expansionism in the first half of the 20th century, including its colonization of the peninsula. South Korean President Moon Jae-in has said Japan's actions are politically motivated and have caused an unprecedented emergency for South Korea's export-driven economy.
Boxing champ Manny Pacquiao returned to Las Vegas, the site of his biggest fights, eager to show the result of a 2-month training regimen. He's also eager to prove that he can still take on another young gun in Keith Thurman this weekend. Valerie Gonzalez reports.
The highly anticipated matchup between Keith Thurman and Manny Pacquiao has already created a stir among fight fans in Las Vegas's MGM Grand Arena, where the fighters greeted fans. Manny Pacquiao shares what motivates him to continue his fighting journey.
Just to myself, I love exercise, and then I think my opponent helped me to get motivated for this fight, and then happy doing this and enjoying my training.
Keith Thurman commented, saying that he will retire the Filipino fighter this Saturday, and Manny responds.
It's what I can respond is it's easy to say, but hard to do it. You will see on Saturday. We did our best in training, so I think it's better than my last fight with Vin Broner. So this is going to be an exciting match, and I'm sure definitely the fans will be happy on Saturday.
Manny also shares his appreciation for all his fans, especially his fellow countrymen in the Philippines.
I would like to invite everyone to come and watch the fight. It's going to be a good fight, more action in the ring, and to all the fans all over the world, especially the Filipino people, thank you so much for your support and prayers. God bless you.
After greeting the fans, Manny was asked if 40 is the new 30 and reveals how his freshly trained body feels going into Saturday's bout.
At this age 40, I don't think that I'm 40. I'm thinking about late 20s. That's my thinking of what I feel like right now.
From the MGM Grand Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada, I am Valerie Gonzalez, and I'm 1 with 25.
Thank you, Valerie.
Thank you, Valerie. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards on Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
That's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles, and we're 1 with 25.